August 12th, and this is the very first Arts, Parks, Health, Aging, and the LA River Committee meeting. Welcome. And I want to welcome my colleagues Joe Buscaino and Curran Price Jr. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And what we have today is we have 17 items on the agenda. And what I'd like to do is to take items 4 through 14 and 16 and 17 on consent. Unless there are member questions or comments.
So moved.
So moved. Then I would like to move to the items 1, 2, 3, and 15. Does any member wish to discuss any of those items? Okay. So we'll go ahead and push on. And I just want to say to the clerk and to the CLA, this is my first meeting that I'm chairing, so feel free. I won't be embarrassed if you have to correct me at all. There's a lot of experience in this room, so I'm happy to listen. So these items are approved, and we will then go with the Los Angeles River. And before we move forward with that, I move that we amend the motion to reflect that Bureau of Engineering is the lead agency. As the named agency in the motion, it was mislabeled as sanitation, although they're definitely part of this. The lead agency is Bureau of Engineering. Could I have a second on that?
Move second.
All right, so we're good?
For
Item 1.
Let me go ahead and read that. Motion O'Farrell Lavange relative to directing the Bureau of Sanitation, Department of Public Works, City Administrative Officer, City Planning Department, and other relevant city entities to report on the status of working groups, agreements, progress, and implementation of the LA River Master Plan within the next 30 days.
All right, we're in good shape. What I'd like to do before we start the presentation is we have one comment card, and it is from Deborah. Oh, yeah, one comment card, and it's from Deborah Meadows. Ms. Meadows, would you like to come up and speak? You bet. Welcome, and thank you. Please take a seat, and we're going to speak right into the microphone, and no one will be offended with your back to them at all, I promise.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. I have a teaching background, so
okay.
you never turn your back, you know. But I can see you anyway, so. I'm from LARABA, which stands for the Los Angeles River Artists and Business Association. And we formed a committee which I co-chair, and that's the Los Angeles River Committee, and we're dedicated to the multi-year effort to have a cycling pedestrian way along the LA River in our Arts District segment that we would hope would extend and link up to the larger pathway system. And that's pretty much the extent of my comments right now.
Okay, well, wonderful. If you wouldn't mind, I would love for you to maybe meet with my staff, Mary Rodriguez, maybe have an offline chat about that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. And then, so without further ado, if we could invite Bureau of Engineering up. And thank you. Thank you. Please identify yourselves.
Good afternoon, Chairman O'Farrell and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Carol Armstrong, and I am with the Bureau of Engineering's LA River Project Office, and this is
Michael Affelt, also with Bureau of Engineering, the LA River Project Office.
Welcome.
So we're just going to give you a little bit of background. The LA River Project Office was established when the City Council adopted the long-range LA River Revitalization Master Plan back in 2007. And we are tasked with implementing the plan and coordinating the work of the different departments and agencies throughout the city to do so. The master plan has a long-range implementation horizon of approximately 20 to 50 years, and it recommends over 240 projects and a three-tiered governance structure. Of those three tiers, two have been established. The LA River Revitalization Corporation, which is now an entity outside of the city, but the board was established by the mayor and city council, and the LA River Cooperation Committee, which is a partnership of the city and the county of Los Angeles and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So there are a variety of projects all along the entire 32 miles of the river that flow through the city that the city departments are involved in, but there are also probably many more that other agencies outside the city and nonprofit organizations and individuals have been involved with. And I was told to give a little bit of background. So as you know, The LA River was channelized by the Army Corps of Engineers in the 1930s, and since then there's been a lot of interest in reconnecting to the river as a community amenity and an environmental resource. And so back in the 1980s, Friends of the Los Angeles River was established by the heart and soul of the river, Louis McAdams, who is still a partner today, and FOLAR remains the largest organization in terms of advocating for the river, with a network of 15,000 some odd people.
The organization? I'm sorry.
Friends of the Los Angeles River, also known as FOLAR. And there are all kinds of organizations that have cropped up in support of LA River revitalization. So the entire river is 51 miles. It's also a priority of the state of California, which has invested a lot in LA River projects, and of the County of Los Angeles, which adopted a master plan for the river in 1996. So the county's master plan looks at the entire 51 miles and creating a trail system. And the difference is that in 2007, the ad hoc committee of the city decided that, yes, we support the county and the state's visions for revitalizing the Los Angeles River, but we want to go beyond that. We want to extend the greening into the communities around the river, and we want to look and see if it's possible to change the concrete in the river's channel for the first time. So we entered into an agreement with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in 2006, and that is called the LA River Ecosystem Restoration Feasibility Study, also known as the ARBOR study. And that's an acronym that refers to the area. So it's the area with restoration benefits and opportunities for revitalization. It's an approximately 11-mile stretch of the river, commonly known as the Glendale Narrows, where the Army Corps wasn't able to put concrete in the bottom of the river because the water table was high. So in that area, you have a lot of islands of vegetation and growth where you have many birds, and it's got a lot of biological diversity already. It also flows through an area that has Griffith Park, Elysian Park, and 2 key confluences. So when the Army Corps of Engineers started this study, they realized that the area to focus on in terms of ecosystem restoration was the Glendale Narrows. And so what we're very excited to say today is that the Army Corps of Engineers, the entity that has to tell us whether or not they can change the concrete in the river's channel, is ready to tell us that. And we were informed recently that the public release date of the Army Corps study is going to be September 20th. And that will go public for a 45-day review period. And the Army Corps of Engineers is going to recommend a sweeping project that looks at key areas of restoration along the river, including the Taylor Yard Complex, which is really important to the community, the Arroyo Seco Confluence, and the Piggyback Yard in downtown LA. However, there are other options on the table, incredible options, which look at expanding at the confluence of the Verdugo Wash near our border with the city of Glendale, and also connecting the Cornfields LA State Historic Park to the river in downtown LA, which would be great because it would leverage that strong state investment in acquiring the Cornfield site for the LA State Historic Park. So we brought some boards today, and we weren't sure when you might want to take a look at those. I want to stress that all of this is draft until the Army Corps goes public with the study, but we as a local sponsor do have access to these, and we want to share them because we know that these images will not change, and they will be in the report going forward.
How long has the study been, Mr. Chairman?
Mm-hmm.
How long has the study been?
The study was technically started in 2005 with a reconnaissance study, which was authorized by Congress, to look at whether or not there was a federal interest in engaging in the study. And there was found to be a federal interest. So the formal agreement between the city and the Army Corps was signed in 2006. So it's been going on since 2006. It's a 50-50 cost share, and now the study is it's over $9.7 million.
Just quick pause here. I want to welcome our colleague Gil Cedillo.
Thank you.
Gil, thank you. Welcome. And we're just getting a report from Bureau of Engineering on the ARBOR study and where that is.
That's right. So,
Please, sure. Joe?
Sure.
Mr. Chair, if I may, and thank you for the report. And just a little bit of background, and forgive my ignorance on this, and this is an incredible project in the city. Why the 11 miles, and how were the 11 miles selected?
Okay, that's a great question. So the Army Corps of Engineers was a partner with us in development of the city's LA River Revitalization Master Plan. So our initial recommendation to the Army Corps of Engineers was the recommendations in the master plan looking at the entire 32 miles of the river within the city. Mm-hmm. So the Corps had to look at that and then evaluate where the greatest ecosystem restoration potential was. And whereas there is potential in various nodes throughout the river, The valley, because it's largely urbanized and the character of the river is entirely concrete, it was hard to make those habitat connectivity arguments.
I see.
But through the Glendale Narrows, we could do that because there's already the existing rich habitat and the opportunity to connect to those upstream significant ecological areas.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So this first board that my colleague Michael, my river brother Michael, is going to show you is the Verdugo Wash Confluence. And what you can see is downtown in the distance. This is facing downstream. And it's basically the 134 goes across the board. And then to your right is the 5 freeway. And on your left is San Fernando Road, where Metrolink comes along, and in the future, high-speed rail will come along this area as well. This area is within the city of Los Angeles, and it's zoned primarily industrial. So it offers a great opportunity for all kinds of future mixed uses, but because it is a confluence and because it is close to Griffith Park, it offers great potential for ecosystem restoration.
I'm sorry, where's Griffith Park?
It's to your right in the hills.
Across the river. And just another quick pause. We have our colleague, Councilmember Tom LaBonge joining us.
Good afternoon, everybody.
And so this board is an image of the cornfield site, now known as the LA State Historic Park. And so this was acquired by the state of California, and it is currently not connected to the river. You may have heard recently in the press about the artist Lauren Bond is investing in this water wheel that will, it's an art installation designed to acknowledge the 100-year anniversary of the opening of the LA Aqueduct, November 5th, 2013. And it will be bringing water out of the river and used to irrigate ecosystem restoration elements of the LA State Historic Park.
Where is that wheel proposed now?
Michael, can you point?
Is right here.
And
Can't see.
And so, because I know it pretty well, this image is similar to the one on page 6-32 of the city's LA River Revitalization Master Plan, which acknowledges that we can have ecosystem restoration connected to the river and still coexist peacefully with the rail.
And the interesting thing about here is there is a historic spot right down here where the dash buses park, where the Za Madre, the original mother dish that took water from the river to the Pueblo, is there where you actually touch the bricks that are there, which are in there, which is to be restored.
Thank you. And then this last image is to show you that also in the most extensive alternative 20, we can create the terraces that we see in the city's master plan as well. So by expanding the channel and changing the configuration, you can accommodate terraces that can safely allow more people in and out of the channel, as well as create those habitat connections upstream to downstream and instream to Outer Bank. So, oh yes, ta-da! This is we were very encouraged to find out that in every single alternative, the piggy backyard arose as a promising alternative in terms of the LA River study. In the Army, that means the Army Corps of Engineers sees a worthwhile federal investment in creating habitat in downtown Los Angeles on this parcel. Now, the thing to understand is this is, obviously it's privately owned, but it's putting a placeholder on the landscape that this is a possibility. This could happen. And the differences in the alternatives are that connection to the rail that you see in this image is only possible in alternatives 16 and 20. The alternative 13 and alternative 10 recommend having the piggy backyard but not connecting it to the river. And we see that as a fundamental sort of coming short of the goal line, if you will. Because why would we acquire it and not connect it to the river? That's the whole point. Yes?
Speaking of the goal line, not like the line to Pasadena, but the goal line, which is 100 yards. The National Football League has looked at this site. Do you hear anything?
I do not. I'm not privy to those conversations,
but also the reality is the railroad owns it. And Mike McKelvey, God rest his soul. Does anybody remember Michael McKelvey? He was the Secretary of the Board of Public Works. One of the first things he told me, colleagues, when I started here 2 years after you were born, Joe, okay, is that you can't mess with the railroad because the railroad's there 100 years before you. They'll be 100 years after you. They don't want to sell. They don't sell. So that's the trouble with the piggy backyard. Anybody here from Union Pacific? So I think it's encouraging to connect that with the East Lake Park, Lincoln Park, but at the same time, it may be a giant energy fight that we are not going to beat the railroad on. So
Is that piggyback yard still in operation now?
it's piggyback. Went by it today.
Yes.
Went by it today.
Well, exactly. And so a lot of the sites along the river are active. And the idea is that once this project is authorized by Congress, we will still need to get funds appropriated. And the intent is to appropriate funds in phases. You never get a whole chunk of money all at once. So as we acquire parcels, we can start to get funds appropriated and move on those in phases.
Wonderful. Any other questions, colleagues? Tom?
I apologize for being late again. Mitch, where is any check dams in that at all?
Yes, Michael, if you would hold up the image of the cornfield site. And if you would point to, so ponding is proposed in the river to accommodate so that to facilitate the water going through the water wheel and then being used to irrigate the ecosystem restoration on the state park site.
And they come back to the river?
Yes.
Or also as well? Just members, I think if I was going to do something today to impact the river, I would put check dams in for two reasons. One, the biggest sin Los Angeles commits is when there is a big storm, all the trash goes to Long Beach. And it's very sad to see it dump in there. If we had check dams, we could put a lot of trash out in the low flow, which there's 365 days a year, correct?
Yes.
Very good, doctor. I thought you were a doctor. And of those 365 days, it may rain this year like it's 25 days or less. Let's say 50 days. So a check dam would allow us to pond the water and get the debris that the Bureau of Sanitation will have under their guise as not doing just the storm drains, but the street cleaning too. It will extract that out earlier. And also the one thing too, this is what makes Los Angeles. On a clear day, and you see the mountains, you feel powerful. And if you see the bottom of the St. Vincent Thomas Bridge, you feel very good. If you look out to the ocean, you feel good. When you see water, you feel good.
Right.
In the inner city, I think it's very important to see water to give us that view. We may not know if we could get to the beach today, but we know if we got to the beach, it may be nice. It's just water does make our spirit special. And the other thing I want to lay on this, when I went to Mr. Felipe Fuentes' swearing-in ceremony at Hanson Dam, they had that beautiful water park there. I would not be, and I don't know if Louis McAdams is here today. I know he's the first man or the first father or the first friend of the river, but I would not be afraid, I see Vicky Israel here, to see us do a water park somewhere along the way so the young people of the center of the city and others could enjoy it somehow. We should not be afraid of water. In Germany, what they do at the rivers, they take a big old ship out of Todd Shipyard in Hamburg or wherever, and they put it next to it, and that becomes a pool for the kids to learn to swim and have fun in. I just think that I don't see this in here, Doctor, do I? Any water park feature in there? I mean, like where you get wet and swim and do all that stuff?
That's correct. The primary
right.
mission is ecosystem restoration.
I got it, but I just think, it's an idea we should really put in there just to look at it. Have you ever been to the Pasadena Aquatic Center right there at the Rose Bowl? Have you ever been there, Doctor? Yeah, unbelievable. And then just see if that was somewhere in the central city, so people could be. Right now we have Downey Park, which just has a little pool right there. I just thought about this the other day when I saw it at Hanson Dam, and I talked to Felipe a little about it, and maybe we could do more adjacent to the river with water. This would be potable water because people would be swimming in it as opposed to wastewater, which is treated, but it's something to think. I wanted to put it on the table.
Thank you. And let's see, Mr. Boscaino and then Mr. Price.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I want to echo what Tom says, how it's incredible what the water line can do, whether you're down at the harbor or here at the LA River. I know you mentioned there's 51 miles of riverway throughout the city of Los Angeles, right?
The first 32 miles flow through the city of LA.
First 32 miles, okay. So out of this, if there's 32 miles in the city of LA, the other 21 miles, what are we doing with the master plan of the additional 21 miles?
So those other cities, we have communicated with the other cities, but they fall outside our purview, so they weren't included in our city's LA River Revitalization Master Plan.
Okay.
But they are all moving forward with
With the
revitalization.
respectable
Yeah.
revitalization.
And Mr. Price?
Thank you. So of the area that's in the city control, there's nothing there for recreation, it's all just restoration? Or does that mean there's also some boating and some swimming and some fishing, or what?
Right, no, there are a variety of different recreation projects along the Los Angeles River, and there have been for many years. All kinds of small parks and bicycle paths and trails and there's been kayaking in the Sepulveda Basin for 2 years. There isn't this year, but there was in 2011, 2012, and for the first time they opened up the Glendale Narrows for the LA River Recreation Zone. And that is
I made
being,
the comment, though, that this was not for recreation, it was for restoration.
the study, the U.S. Army Corps study, has to focus on ecosystem restoration. As background, since the Army Corps of Engineers created the flood control project, and that flood control project has resulted in environmental damage, and they've done this across the country, they've in recent decades developed a mission for ecosystem restoration to go back to those locations where they did flood control projects and where there was environmental damage to now restore that
So
ecosystem
is that
value.
literally they're going to tear up the cement then, or is it going to just alter it in some ways, or what?
Correct. The conclusion is that it is possible, and I think the entire city council should feel very good about that the city entered into this partnership. The byline is you can only change the concrete in the river's channel if the Army Corps says that you can, and we know by all of the alternatives going forward that they're saying it is possible.
Great. Mr. Cedillo, any questions? No? What I'd like to do is, thank you for this snapshot. So what we're going to do, folks, is every month we're going to add the river to the regular agenda to Arts Parks, so once a month. So what I'd like to do is for you to come back next month with a more comprehensive presentation on the alternative sites, the genesis of the master plan, and its context within the entire county, and its context within the different council districts. I think that would be helpful. And then maybe an explanation of where we're headed with some of the provisions of the master plan. And I think that'll help us all understand the context moving forward of the river piece.
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Cedillo.
Right, because I think what we have to recognize is that there's a commitment to this from all the colleagues that are here, that we share the mayor's vision and commitment, and that there's a real opportunity. I am interested in collaboration with other cities, as Councilmember Buscaino talked about, because we want to make sure, it all flows one way, and so we want to make sure that we're doing things that are at least coherent and consistent with each other. And as the mayor said, we don't want to be the 800 or 900-pound gorilla, but on the other hand, it's very significant for us, and so there should be that type of thought towards collaboration. But we should be very clear about our commitment, and it's very clear as it's been. This proposal that we will be announcing shortly for option 20 is what we need and what we should pull all our resources of the city, the mayor and the council should work together with our congressional delegation and with all the resources that we have in Washington to bring those resources to the city of Los Angeles so that we can realize the full restoration as envisioned in the plan.
Thank you. Well said, Mr. Cedillo. And I'd like to just acknowledge Dr. Carol Armstrong for, 10 years of this now? Right around 10?
Yes, seven.
Yep.
Seven
Okay,
with the river.
7, all right. So your work over the years has been incredible, and you are largely the reason why we've come so far. So I commend you for that. And Michael, you're more recent, but you've been at this for a while too, so I commend you both. And I have one last request, and that is, as you can see, I'm wearing my river pin. And Tom is wearing a pin. It may not be the river pin, but he's got one. But my colleagues,
I brought them.
we need our river pins. Thank you. Thank you.
One more little business here.
Yes.
How do we break out the bikeway on the river? Okay, because I think this is a priority. Is it in this committee or Transportation Committee? If an issue, Mr. Clerk, if there's an issue on the Los Angeles River Bikeway, is that going to be in this committee or in the Transportation Committee?
Normally, that would go to transportation, but I'm sure it can be a dual referral.
Well, I think we should, because I think one of the goals is to have that bikeway go all the way to Dr. Armstrong, pop quiz. Okay, where's the start of the LA River? What two creeks?
Bell Creek and Arroyo Calabasas in the community of Canoga Park,
Very
Council
good,
District
very
3.
good. And what high schools are next to? What high schools are next to?
Canoga Park, go Hunters.
Oh, hey, she got it all. I was going to do that, so you got it. That's good. But if we get the bikeway out the river, then, and also the auxiliary, I think it should be in our committee so we can pound away at it. And also, I'm working with Universal to try to show, Dr. Armstrong is going to make a presentation to Universal, because possibly they could enhance, and of the 300 days of the year, find a way to get into the river and out of the river as some type of awareness and attraction. It's for that, because the river is so valued. And also, when was the city founded?
17/4.
And what date? September what? Very good.
Oh, excellent. All right.
She's good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your
All right,
leadership.
Thank you. You got it.
so much.
Yes.
Hey.
And now I kind of went out of order. I would actually like sanitation and planning to come up to the table for a verbal presentation and update.
This would be item,
Still item number 1. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, council members. Enrique Zaldívar, Director of LA Sanitation. Adel Hashkalil,
Assistant General Manager for Sanitation.
and we have quite a bit to do with the river. We're happy to be one of the key partners in this whole revitalization, but we have one lead responsibility, and that is the water quality in the LA River. Folks who go in or near the water, we want to make sure that that water is safe and that it meets all the state and federal water quality standards. I'm taking sort of a risk here and starting to throw out some numbers with all of you being such whiz for statistics and numbers, but especially Councilmember LaBonge. But you know that the LA River Watershed, now much of our language now revolves around watersheds. You know that. The LA River Watershed is 63% of the city's landmass. Proportionally, you would think that 63% of the rainfall would go in the LA River. How many other watersheds do we have, Councilmember LaBonge?
I want you to tell everybody, because I missed that class.
Okay.
Yeah, I was late for it.
There are 4 total watersheds, and each one of your districts falls within one of those watersheds. But the others, Bayonet Creek, which is the next largest at 23% of the landmass. Santa Monica Bay at 9%, and the Dominguez Channel LA Harbor at 5% of the landmass. Now, these are naturally defined gravity flow areas. Now, the water quality in the LA River has a number of water quality standards that have to be improved and met over the several years. One, trash TMDL. They're known as TMDLs. These are water quality standards, total maximal daily lows. These are state and federal mandated water quality standards. We're 90% compliant. It's with trash TMDL. We're approaching 100% compliance. So that's a very important milestone that facilitates all of the development that follows around the revitalization effort. Ammonia, toxicity, we're near compliance with that. Actually, we're in compliance with that water quality standard already. Metals, that's in development, and then bacteria, TMDL. So it's important for your committee to know that alongside and in parallel to all of the revitalization efforts, we're making tremendous progress in the water quality. We're partners with many other regional entities, the county being one of them, of course, State Water Resources Control Board. And to every extent possible, whenever we do a water quality project, whether it's through Prop O, which all of you are very proud of, or any of our other funding sources, we always look for opportunities to do multi-benefit types of projects that in many instances can incorporate a recreational benefit with it as well, or a water supply benefit for groundwater recharge or other things of the like. For sure, always a water quality benefit. That is primary and paramount for us. Adele's going to give you some ideas of the projects that we have done recently that have that kind of principle of multi-benefit that have been in relation to improving water quality in the LA River. It's also important for you to know that the water that comes into the LA River during dry weather, the water that's in there now, comes from two of our water reclamation plants, Tillman and the Sepulveda Basin. We have as a commitment the idea to put in no less than 27 million gallons per day into the LA River for habitat retention. So the water that you see in the LA River upstream of the Glendale Narrows is from Tillman. When you get to LAG, Glendale Water Reclamation Plant, which is now in your district, Councilmember O'Farrell, we add more water there as well. So downstream from there, there's a total of probably 35 MGD, million gallons per day, of tertiary treated water. This is irrigation value, irrigation quality water that goes in the LA River. Adele, why don't you talk about some of the projects we've done?
Good afternoon. Water is the key component for a river. Without water, we cannot revitalize the river. And clean water is the essential element of that. I know Enrique mentioned a lot of things we're doing. Sewer spills and managing the sewer system, which is completely, people see it probably independent. But if the system is not working right, it has a huge impact on the water quality. And over the last 10 years, we've done a great job in investing in upgrading our sewer system and wastewater system. And to date, we have reduced our sewer spills that we have by 83%, 84%, which is a huge thing. In addition to the trash removal from the river, the catch basin screens, you see a lot of the things, the Tom LaBonge design, the revised design of making it better so we can sweep better in front of it is a great thing.
What that was, just so they know, on your storm drains in your district, some of them, the early ones, were put with an inset. And basically, it became a catch point for trash and debris. And because I have zero engineering background, I figured a way to move them to the curb, and that way the sweeper's blades will pick it up, and there's less congestion. Is that correct?
And thank you.
They gave me an honorary degree from B.O.S. or B.S.O.S.O.S.O.
As you like it.
Yeah.
It's all BS. No.
Bureaus of Standards, just to let you know.
No, that is actually, we refer to that design as the LaBonge design, by the way.
Right. Yeah. So that's why
So-
you should pick those up.
So as we address water quality is a huge challenge for us to comply with a lot of the water quality standards for the bacteria, etc. We need to do a lot of things. We are working on an enhanced water management plan on a watershed basis in partnership with the agencies in the watershed to look at ways to address water pollution at the same time manage the water as a resource. We are developing that, should be ready in the next 18 months, and that's the partnership, and it's in compliance with the stormwater permit. But in the meantime, proposition of our ratepayers in 2004 were recognized the value of clean water and approved a bond measure to implement 27 projects, I believe, that we have in place to address water quality. And these were a down payment on what can be done and what's possible. So in addition, we've used leverage grants from the state. Many of the past legislators from the state, thank you for helping us get some of the Proposition 84, Proposition 50, Proposition 40, that we're able to leverage and build a lot of these projects. But you see along the river, as we're addressing water quality, you start from the Sun Valley. We have Elmer Street. Elmer Street is a great example of an area that used to flood and used to have a lot of problems with flooding and issues with the community. We took that and converted into a street that's Green Street that captures runoff from 40 acres that used to flood the neighborhood, and now we're putting it underground in an infiltration gallery in the street and redid the entire street into what we call a low-impact development, an area that you can capture rain and use it through grassy swales. We built another project next to it. It's called Elmer Paseo, and that's another alley that used to be an eyesore for the community. Now it's a beautiful green alley that can be communicated, and people can walk through and connect neighborhoods. You're going to see a new concept. We can call it the Greenway. Many of the projects are called Greenway because it's not just water. It connects people, it connects communities, and greens communities. As you go down, we have north.
At a costly, it's very expensive too.
At a cost, but there's. Yeah, sure. I mean, everything is cost, but there's the added benefit, and that's what we need to do. And the other thing is you go down, further down, you have North Atwater. North Atwater is right here in Atwater Village, where we actually took a creek that was a pollution to the LA River, and we were able to convert that into a park, into a restoring the stream, and removing trash above it, and really improve the area, which makes it a better place and improves the water quality going to the river. You go to Garvanza Park in Highland Park. Garvanza Park is an area that basically we capture 40 acres of runoff that used to come down, polluted into the LA River. Now it's captured into a cistern, treated, and reused at the park for irrigation. And that also provided recreational area with partnership with our friends in Rec and Parks to build areas for the kids to enjoy and play, and at the same time we're managing runoff pollution, at the same time using the water for irrigation, and now providing something better for the community. You go down to South Los Angeles. In the 9th District, we have South LA Wetlands Park, and that Wetlands Park is an example of also addressing bacteria into the LA River. That area drains into the LA River, and that had a bacteria issue. That water now comes into the wetlands and is treated through conversion of that MTA parking lot into 3 cells of wetland that treats the water, plus also provides a habitat and a greening of the community. So these multiple benefits, and those continue from one place to the next, to the next, to the next. We are having another project through Proposition O, which is the Albion Dairy in Council District 1. Councilman Cerrillo, we're going to be working with you on how we add to the benefit on that project. And that's a water quality project. We are working on a project in that area and seeing how Proposition O can help. We demolished the building. Now, how can we now beneficially use it and work with the community on how we beneficially use that thing? And the key thing is it's addressing water quality, but in a partnership with the community and the neighborhoods and the leveraging resources. There's other projects that we have planned for the future. There's a huge queue list for Proposition O future if there's anything available. But the key thing what we need to do, it's going to cost us about $8 billion over the next 20 years to address water quality in Los Angeles for compliance with the mandates. The question is, can we do it in a smart way where we're actually leveraging and making this city a better place while addressing water quality? And the key is LA River. LA River is a component. Everything goes to the river. And if we can do it in a way that we're capturing runoff upstream, that means less water in the river so we can revitalize the river. As you know, the council a few years ago adopted an ordinance to require all new developments to capture runoff on site. It's called the Low Impact Development Ordinance. It's the leading ordinance in the entire country. What we're doing is trying to keep runoff, keep water close to the source so it does not have to become a pollution and have to cost us a lot more money in the future. So we're looking forward to working with each of you as we move forward and build water quality projects that can make our neighborhoods and our city a better place. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yes, questions?
Yeah,
Mr.
no, I
LaBonge.
just want to say 2 things. One, water and power has been a component of success in many of these endeavors. Who owns the water? This is important, remember, Joe?
Sure.
Who owns the water when it leaves the plant?
The purveyor of all water in the city is the Department of Water and Power.
But when it leaves your plant, that's technically water and power. So the question on recycling and purple pipe is the thing. We want to talk about greenways. If we could work with Caltrans, and I see some former state representatives here, to pump more reclaimed water into the freeways. They once were beautiful greenways, but there's everything, that's one of those issues. And so that's one point I wanted to make for awareness. And the other thing, too, they've done a wonderful job in North Atwater. Mitch, you were involved as a deputy for Mr. Garcetti. But right now, this is this one part of Chevy Chase Park. And I see Mike Scholes here, the head of planning. There's a motion that's going to be heard in this committee to look at where the tree trucks park, if they could be relocated deeper into the central service yard and create more park space adjacent to the river. Central Service Yard is very important for the park system, but the one that's closest to that park possibly could be a expanded park as well and looked at. So we look at those. But I did want to mention water, power, and recreation and parks because I know we just opened Sunny Nook Park thanks to Recreation and Parks and the state bond, but also water and power for the land. So that's just key points.
Those are great points, Mr. LaBonge. Anyone else? Any other questions? No? Mr. Clerk, do we need to approve the items? What's the next step here?
Next step would be, sounds like in this matter, it'd be a continued item to the
Okay,
committee.
for 30 days? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, please.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can't forget about us.
Of course.
So we're here with an exciting project called the Nila Riverfront Collaborative. It's basically a collaborative effort with, it's a multi-departmental effort. And I'm going to have George Villanueva, who's the project manager, talk about that. And then I will talk about the vision plan that the planning department's working on. And
Thank you.
I didn't introduce myself. My name's Christine Saponaro from City Planning.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you again, and we're excited that the river's in this committee, and thanks for holding this first committee meeting. I'm George Villanueva. I'm the project manager for the Northeast Los Angeles Riverfront Collaborative. Just going to give you a quick overview of the project. We're a project funded by a HUD Partnership for Sustainable Communities Community Challenge Planning Grant. We were in the first cohort. We were one out of 33 of the first cohort in 2009 to get funded for this grant out of 700 applications nationwide. It formerly was a CRA grant, but was reassigned into previously what was called the Community Development Department. Now that's called the Economic and Workforce Development Department. So it's a sustainable economic development, planning, and civic engagement grant that really looks to build off a lot of the great momentum that a lot of the Riverly members here that have gone to kind of build the river. We're looking to also create a place-based strategy to connect that asset to really the northeast neighborhoods that are adjacent to that river, the river in the northeast. That includes Atwater Village, Cypress Park, Lincoln Heights, Glassell Park, and also Elysian Valley. And our three main goals are looking at studying a riverfront district in that northeast section, also creating a very comprehensive economic development implementation strategy that looks to not only link land use planning, but also look at linking workforce development strategies, placemaking strategies, food policy in the region, and also, very importantly, civic engagement strategies. And one of the other goals of the project is really to create a very robust engagement strategy that includes a lot of engagement, community-based research, popular education, and also public media use in the area to really create a model for other planned place-based, community-based approaches that the Economic Development Department are looking to do in other parts of the city. And just our deliverables are a set of economic development recommendations that we plan to have by our end date, which is next spring in 2014. Also a vision plan that Christine will talk more about. Also a placemaking strategy, and also, again, a model of civic engagement and participation in media for any other planned projects. And it's, again, we're also very much a partnership that looks to break down the silos of a lot of city agencies. So our partners are, again, it's housed in the Economic and Workforce Development Department, also the Department of City Planning, Bureau of Engineering, and also the Workforce Investment Board. We're also officially partnered up with nonprofits, the LA River Revitalization Corporation, the LA Conservation Corps, National Park Service at the federal level, and also the LA County Economic Development Corporation. Also, the universities are involved in collaborative with the USC Metamorphosis Project, and also the Occidental College Urban Environmental and Policy Institute. Public media partner is the KCT Departures Program, Public Media. And lastly, our private economic development and real estate financing economic development strategist, Tierra West Advisors. And so we're very much excited about kind of working across and really building a model collaboration that really looks at using the river as an asset, but also connecting a lot of development to make sure that the neighborhoods that are adjacent in that area also benefit and also have a say in how they want to see their neighborhoods develop and benefit from a lot of this attention that's been given to the river.
Thank you.
And I'd like to talk a little bit about the vision plan. Essentially, what we're doing with the vision plan is taking a holistic look at this area here. And as you may know or have visited this area, it's very beautiful. It's what Carol was talking about before, that there is no cement on the bottom, so it actually looks like a real river. If you go anywhere it's not a concrete channel, it's a real river. And so what we're trying to do is kind of look at this area and find the opportunities for growth, opportunities for change, and opportunities for recreation. It's kind of what you were asking about earlier. We're trying to look at this area and really see what we need to do for the future so that we can bring this area and make it a recreational zone instead of just an area that's a secret community spot that people know about. Currently, if you get onto the river, you kind of have to get on and off several times because it doesn't actually all connect with regards to access, with regards to mobility, pedestrian ways, walking ways, all of that. It doesn't actually have a circular path, and so we're trying to look and create something that is circular, so that you know that if you start at the beginning of the river, of this area, that you can go all the way around and come back. You'll have recreational opportunities along the way, stuff like parks, water parks, food establishments, just things that you want to do for fun, and you want to stay there the whole day. So we're looking at the vision plan coming out in next year, probably around February or March for CPC and then council.
Wonderful. I have a question, and then I know my colleagues are going to have questions too. As part of this River Collaborative in this study, are you looking at long-term revenue streams? For example, a tax increment financing district overlay within this area, because you've heard some of these numbers already thrown around in the billions of dollars for a variety of things, whether it's water quality or just infrastructure improvements. I'm terribly interested in the establishment of tax increment financing along the Los Angeles River for permanent infrastructure improvements in the public right-of-way specifically.
Sure, and we'll have John Yonai, who's from Tierra West Advisors, who's doing our financing, to kind of speak on that.
Thank you, Councilman. Our firm is looking at a number of opportunities in terms of economic development and financing tools. You're right, with the loss of redevelopment, which was our driving factor, now we're looking at other opportunities, and part of the collaboration here and our efforts are to try to figure out what other resources can we bring to the table, and how do we break down some of those barriers? Because, for instance, we know the Army Corps is going to spend someplace between $500 to $1.5 billion in the river. Okay, how can we do that a little bit more wisely? How do we apply it to some of the projects that will enhance the riverfront and in the community itself? Because it's just not strictly about the riverfront, but as you see in the map, the defined area in front of you, it's a larger area, so it's just not along the riverfront. So we're looking at potentially CFDs, community facilities districts, other types of tax increment financing, maybe an allocation through the Economic Development Department, maybe an allocation from the future general fund revenues that might come to the city from these specific areas. Obviously, we want to have the community support itself provide to it, but we also know that we need to look to the state and federal sides, too, for the larger bulk of these financing opportunities.
Thank you, John. And for the record and for the public's good, I'm not proposing a tax increase at all, never have. Tax increment financing is not a tax increase, and it also doesn't mean eminent domain at all. So just for total clarification here, we're talking about keeping local tax dollars local for our own benefit. Thank you.
And just to add to what John said, my name is Gerardo Rubalcaba. I'm with the Economic and Workforce Development Department. I think one of our most important deliverables for this project, not only to the city but to HUD as well, is developing that new tool bag for sustainable economic development. So, this spring, as George had indicated earlier, we will come back to this committee as well as to the Economic Development Committee with some of those recommendations in terms of how we move forward and, with place-based economic development strategies.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I know that when I talk to the community members, they always ask, how's everything going to get paid for? And because our document is a vision document and it's just a policy document, obviously none of the things would be, or many of the things will not be funded. But what we're hoping to do is have this as an investment priorities booklet, so that when money does come, within the city budget or even in the form of grants, we can apply for those and have projects that are already in the books and already discussed and talked about. And ready for action, so that it could speed up the process. And also, as we've seen with the Lacrette's Bridge that was just funded, people do want to privately invest in the river, especially when they see that this is something that is good for the community and also good for their business and, just the city as a whole. So this is kind of, we're trying to create a strategy that makes this area important and valuable to investors as well, so that we can get private investments into the river and that we can accept those private investments as part of our projects as well.
Great point. Thank you. Mr. Buscaino?
Well, you made mention, give me your name again, I'm sorry, ma'am.
Christine from
Christine,
City Plan.
about the visionary plan, the vision plan. I know we've been talking about this for, 10 years now, and we're now creating a vision plan. Can you just address that?
Talking about a vision plan, Christine?
Yeah.
Well, there is the master plan that came before this, and it's what Carol was talking about. It's for the entire river. The master plan encourages the city to look at more concentrated areas and kind of develop plans for those areas. So this is what we're doing now. We're taking a closer look at this Northeast LA area and creating a vision
On
plan.
specific area?
Yes.
Got it.
And, I think when this grant was originally funded, the goal had been to develop an update to the Northeast LA Community Plan, but because of issues with the CRA dissolvement, we were reduced from a 3-year grant to basically down to an 18-month grant, so there just isn't that time to
Thanks for the
complete
background. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Terrific. Mr. Cedillo?
So you have to hurry. You have to cut your timetable in half. To solve the problem in half the time, or half the problem in the rest of the time. So I'm interested if you could elaborate on your vision, this private investment, what you see, what it would look like, what are the possibilities, models throughout the country. Give us how we get to Highline and half the price and half the time.
We want to be better than Highline.
That's right.
There you go.
Essentially, I've been doing some research on...
And then one last one, just you can then give me the narrative, is safety concerns around bike lanes and pedestrian lanes and how we do that, and then where the Confluence fits in the list of priorities. Confluence fits in the list of priorities.
So I've been doing lots of research on all different types of river zones that have been created, as well as walkway areas and market areas, commercial corridors, and just trying to see what the benefits, or basically what's good about all these areas and what keeps people coming back. So we're looking to do that here, but I can't do it myself because every time I go to the community, I say, this is, I wish I lived here, and I love to visit this area, but it's their community. So that's why we're working on the engagement process right now, and just kind of talking to the community members every day and seeing what they want for the areas. Hopefully by the end of the engagement, the community engagement will have some opportunity sites that have been selected by them, some goals for this area, and the goals are going to refer to the access to the river, experience and character along the river, creating a zone, kind of like a recreational fun zone around this area. So I can't really say what my my final goals are, because they're not my final goals. We have to continue the community engagement process first.
So I get that. My question was more about vision and options. So do you raise it's like going into a restaurant and you say you can have whatever you want, or there's a menu. And so what's your menu look like?
Well, because it's a vision, first of all, we've never had a vision plan for the city before. We've had master plan, but we haven't had a vision plan. So basically my boss said, do whatever you want. And it's not a legislative document, so it's a policy document. So the sky's the limit, essentially.
Maybe it would be helpful when you come back in 30 days to give us your outreach methodology in the zone. That would be helpful, I think.
I'm interested in the options on the discourse. That's obviously much of the first. Is this all in the first?
It's
No, it's half first and half 13. It used to be 4 first and 13, but then redistricting happened, and now it's you two. So.
No, it's us.
It's us.
But very much
see the menu that's part of the dialogue, or how you guide the collective community dialogue. I'm very interested in that. What it would look like. Inform us. I mean, and inform us about the models that work around the country that you like best. Why San Antonio? Why not San Antonio? Why Highline? Why not Highline? Why the whole range that exists kind of a survey?
One of the other things that, in terms of financing, and one of the benefits of being part of this cohort of HUD Sustainable Community grantees across the nation, we do go to a yearly conference with the other grantees to see what types of financing and revenue making options there are that tie to kind of types of place-based development. So we're looking to continue those discussions, and the feds are interested in bringing us back once we have a lot of our kind of menus available to kind of talk about kind of financing and implementation strategies as well. So.
And then in terms of addressing part of your question in a little bit more detail, we're looking at opportunities through the planning side and through future rezoning as an opportunity to take a look at how more development may be able to happen, maybe less, depending upon the location and what the community wants. But that's what they were saying. We need to reach out to the community first to find out what their desires are, and then how to take advantage and make use of those public-owned properties that may be underdeveloped now, that maybe offer an opportunity for a better use along the river.
I just want to make sure that this public discourse is structured in such a way that people understand what the range and breadth is, right? And you know that because you're professionals. But if I'm a community person walking down the street, what do I know about what the options are if I haven't had the opportunity to survey them? So for me, it's about constructing this menu, right? Is what's the Bryant Park experience mean down there, right? And how do I, if I live in a place, right, in a community where people are constantly told there's no money, and my parks are closed, or there's not enough staffing hours, or not enough library hours, then it tempers the imagination, right? And so I want to have a discussion where people get to know that the imagination should be broader for the discussion, and it won't happen unless we counter all that with other options that can be put on the table. So we want to. That's how I'd like to collaborate in this discussion with you guys.
Wonderful. Any?
Just
yes,
add
Mr.
real quick,
LeBlanc.
most people who live adjacent to the river don't want to. They're cautious about the river because they're not fair to the river. Mr. Chair, I ask that next month, let's ask Los Angeles Police Department report, because now the time has come to see regular bike patrols on the river, and that doesn't mean 5 times a day. It may be just once a day, like you have a patrol in a neighborhood. Someone sees, eyes and ears, they know it's not a place to be. The challenge that Mr. Zedillo spoke of in his district is it's transformed the area. It's the first time in the Elysian Valley area that the park was built. The river was built right next to the Bikeway, so the people, and they have a chance to come out to the river. They have a chance to come out to the river, and therefore there's conflict sometimes with the cyclists, especially those in hot pants who like to drive fast, and the neighbors who like to walk and stroll. The transformation is there. And also, historically, because of 2 things. One, the reduction in change of taxes, whether it was for the County Flood Control District or the other entities, from 1978, they used to go through regular maintenance of just chopping everything out of there. And I know Enrique left the building right now, but Adele's here. The fact that they have cleaned their water, it doesn't kill the trees. And the trees are now growing. And our former mayor, Mr. Verdugo, who got stuck at, I think, 622,318 trees. He didn't get 1 million trees. I told him he should have counted the trees in the river, because there's millions of trees in the river. And now, because of cleaner water, it doesn't kill it. It has happened. 1, they stopped maintaining it, Mitch, because they used to clean it out every year. And 2, the water got clean. And our section of the river from Travel Town out on the northwest part of Griffith Park, around the bend, minus the 134, all that infrastructure, the high freeway there, all the way down, is open bottom because the power of the underground river always popped up the concrete. So they let it natural all the way around, and I think it somehow has to do with the geographic influence of the hills, whether they're Griffith Park, Silver Lake, Elysian Park Hills, adjacent to it, that the water, they want it natural there. It's not because they were green. It's because the natural river didn't allow that. But I think I would be very cautious on upzoning, because people are very protective of the Elysian Valley and Atwater Village. As a former deputy who worked those areas, and they will bite your head off right away. So you be cautious in that, but make sure you connect it and let them benefit. as if, when it is, because you mentioned upzoning, that's what made my thing. People on the beach don't want any more housing, they just want their house there. These people have a house there, let them enjoy that for a half a century as it transform in a sense there, and just be cautious of it. Lastly, San Antonio, which I was at this summer, is no wider than from the back of this door to the San Antonio diversion of a 1920 flood channel, which I saw the guy's name on a little bridge, and they thanked him, and it was nice. It was his idea. And is that something we should look through the arts district that would bring water out of the river and put it back in and really change the canal as it is, or at some points there. So I thank you all, and you're all young enough to see change, only because you're a little like me, but I'm older. I know you three are all ready for this, and you're going to see the change. I'm teasing you. I shouldn't have done that. But anyway, charge ahead. I do that to Dr. Armstrong because she's the future. So.
Yes, I know George is young because I worked with him 12 years ago on Garcetti's staff. Mr. Price.
No, I just want to thank staff. You guys are doing some extraordinary work, and this is really an exciting opportunity to really shape, not just the present, but the future. But piggybacking on Gil's concern about the level of community involvement and engagement, I thought this process had been going on for a while. You make it sound like this sort of what do you want to see is just sort of just starting. Is that accurate, or where are we with that in terms of citizen involvement, engagement?
I'm Gerardo Rubalcaba. I'm with the Economic and Workforce Development Department. So I think when we talk about engagement, we're talking about this project specifically. So we know with the River Master Plan and some of the other river work that has been going on for decades, our project is focused solely on the 5 communities that abut the LA River in Northeast LA. So our process has been going on now for with the CRA project.
Start of the year.
Yeah, so about a year now.
And Mr. Price, if I may offer, I worked on the River Revitalization Master Plan as staff, and that was adopted in 2007. And it was a multi-million-dollar plan funded by the city and LADWP. And I think you'll be pleased on the presentations next month to see some of the implementations of that master plan since 2007. So we're on our way in that sense, and I know that this was a separate and later additional grant, sort of this visioning process that we're going through. So I look forward to this committee being given the full context of the recent history of the master planning and the implementation along the river. So if that helps at all, I think we've got some good things to look forward to, and some exciting things are happening out there as we speak.
I think, and just to add in terms of the engagement process as well, the neighborhood, because of the river and a lot of things going on in the Northeast, is constantly in change. So when we go out there's a lot of folks who are moving in and out and so forth. So we've been out. We're on an ambitious kind of survey process where we're knocking on everyone's door and trying to get as many folks to take a 15-minute survey about the broad kind of aspects of sustainable economic development. And we're at the point right now where we have about 650 residents who've taken the 15-minute surveys, and these are all face-to-face. And we're also interviewing small businesses in the area. So to really connect a lot of this stuff, a lot of what's going on in the river to kind of ideas around business development and business retention and small business development. So there, and it's a little bit of a surprise for us as we will have the analysis and all the findings later this fall after we're done Labor Day, to actually see that a lot of residents continue to be interested in learning more about what's going on, not only in the river, but their communities as well, and wanting to be engaged about kind of having a little bit more say about how this neighborhood goes in terms of the future development, growth, and change in the neighborhood. Because we just had one, there was staff from both CD1 and CD13 at our workforce development and jobs policy engagement workshop this Saturday, and there's definitely a lot of concern still about from local residents who've been there for a while about the change in the neighborhoods and whether they're going to be priced out. So there's a lot of folks who are really interested in being involved in actually having a say in terms of how the community continues to develop.
All right, in the interest of time, and I know, Mr. LeBonge, you have to leave in 15 minutes, I think,
right.
Or 10.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. One last one from Mr. Cedillo.
Just so I'd like to look at the survey.
Sure.
That's all.
Okay. So without objection, these items are deemed approved?
Continue.
Okay. Continued? All right. And Mr. Clerk, item 2?
Item number 2, motions to Deal Lavange relative to directing the Department of Recreation and Parks to report to the Arts, Parks, Health, Aging, and River Committee on all joint use agreements with Los Angeles Unified School District, the process of establishing additional joint use agreements with LAUSD sites in Council District 1, and to identify potential funding sources. This matter has also been referred to the Education and Neighborhoods Committee.
Thank you. And we have Recreation and Parks here for comment. Thank you. Please identify yourself. And
Vicki Israel, Assistant General Manager for Recreation and Parks for Partnership and Revenue Branch.
And Michael Scholl, Recreation and Parks Assistant General Manager.
Yes. So today we are just going to give you a short verbal overview of our joint agreements with LAUSD, and we will be bringing forth a written. We still have some more research to do, but just to give you an overview, there are existing right now 28 joint use agreements with LAUSD. 6 of them are with pools, 21 of them are with athletic fields, and 1 is athletic fields and a pool combined. In each of the...
I'd ask you to repeat that again.
There are 28 joint use agreements. 6 are of pools, 21 are with athletic fields, and 1 is athletic fields and a pool, one of the joint use agreements. In Council District 1, there are 2 joint use agreements. In Council District 4, there's 1 joint use agreement. Council District 9, there's 3 joint use agreements. In Council District 13, there's 4. And in Council District 15, there are 4 joint use agreements. However, joint use agreements is really a matter of semantics because we have many, many other types of agreements with LAUSD. An example is we have seasonal license agreements for our pool, some of our pools. We have 4 of those, and those vary within, depending on budget or not, whether or not we actually do operate them in the summer. So currently we're operating Miguel Contreras and East Valley High School, but we do have 4 of those licensed. It's a different terminology, but it's still a joint use in working with LAUSD. We also, on the flip side, have many recreation centers out in the field throughout the entire city that obtain permits through Los Angeles Unified School District, civic service permits. And there are many of those, and that we will bring those numbers back to you at a later date. That's what is taking us a lot of time to actually research exactly how many recreation centers are using either sports fields or gymnasiums at some of the schools. An example for a joint use agreement, again, in CD1, because that was specifically what the motion was asking for, is we have 2 of those. One is at Roybal Learning Center, and we actually permit out Vista Hermosa Soccer Field, which is adjacent to that, through our Municipal Sports Division, which is our adult sports. And we do provide additional opportunities for community organizations to use that. The other high school that we have a joint use agreement in CD1 is Lincoln High School. However, we're not using Lincoln because we have Lincoln Park, which is close proximity to the high school, which has multiple fields and a gymnasium, and truthfully, we don't need to use it there. So you have to really kind of dive into some of the details to really understand that we've had an ongoing relationship with LAUSD in many capacities, but just some we're using and some we are not. Mike?
So, Mike Scholl, Rec and Parks. So joint use or permits, or however you want to say it, it's definitely one piece of the puzzle for the open space issue in LA. It's not a matter of, at least in our opinion, it's not a matter of the amount of park space citywide. We have a lot more park space than people even know or understand. It's really the location and the access to that park space which is the issue. It's not the amount of park space. We far exceed the national averages, but generally speaking...
Mike, can I interrupt you?
You sure can.
I'm reading here, Tom's motion talks about us, that the city has only about 10% of the recommended 8 to 10 acres of park space for every 1,000 residents.
Excuse me, Deputy City Attorney Arletta Brimsey, before you go down that road, I wanted to caution you, the motion that you're referring to was not assigned by the council president to this committee, and it was not properly noticed on the agenda, so certain specifics of that motion you cannot discuss properly today.
Let me, with all due respect, Council, say to you that with respect to the point that he just raised, I will just give you a fact then that I know. Okay? And the fact is that it's been stated that we're only using 10% of the recommended amount of space that other cities should use. And so you just raised a point that said we're way ahead and we're better than most and we meet the national average. So I just want you to reconcile those 2 points.
Certainly. I don't know where, there used to be a standard by the National Recreation and Parks Association, of which I'm a member, and a lot of the executive staff are members in the department, where they used to use averages like that across the nation. The National Recreation and Parks Association no longer use that standard for park acreage. And it was commonly 8 to 10 acres, and even some organizations use as low as 4 acres. I mean, there's been a lot of organizations that use different standards. When we have approximately, it's approximately 9 acres per thousand. And again, what I said, council member, is the problem isn't with our amount of park space. It's the location and the access to that park space. What separates LA from every other city in the nation is our density, but mostly our geography. Is we are spread out a lot more than most cities. And so even though I'll use Griffith Park as an example, that's 4,000 acres. If you took that park out of the equation, then our park acreage per thousand drops tremendously. Now Griffith Park serves many thousands and thousands of people, but it may not necessarily be accessible to some parts of the city, which we believe, like South LA and some of these other areas of Wilmington, where they're not regular users of Griffith Park. So it's not, and again, it's in our opinion, and it's not really a matter of the amount of acres, whether you have it or don't have it. It's where it's located. And because of our geography and our sprawling nature of the city, that's a challenge that we have within the department, is finding those spots where there might be less than 1,000 per acres in some of these communities. And certainly I bet I could find one in every one of the council districts without question. It's just when you look at it as a whole, it's not as bad as what it sounds. But when you look at it, when you drill down into it, and that's what makes joint use so important, is you have to drill down into it to each community and determine whether or not they have access to a particular recreational need, and then where you might be able to find it via a school.
Mr. LaBonge.
I work youth services in the 70s, early 70s. That's the after-school playground. And they had a walk-through policy that the gate wouldn't be wide open, but it'd be chained open so you could walk through and run on the track. Several millions of dollars we've spent, and Neil Drucker, engineer, mentioned not all of it, and partial, to build the field or whatever, joint use, but there's not that joint use happening. So I think this motion is good. I support looking at this, and I think the department needs more time. There's over 500, it's over 400 parks, and I think there's over 700 schools. And to look at where we can, I did in my motion, which is not listed today, so I cannot talk about it, but in the emphasis of my motion, there was talk about the community college bonds, because they are also public facilities, and county bonds in city parks, which I cannot talk about. But I wanted to state that, so that you do that. I will go to confession and say I tried to trick you.
I cannot talk about, however.
I can't talk about it. In all due respect, Mr. Chair, I'm going to go to the next community meeting, which I know Michael's going to be at, I believe. Vicky's going to be at. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mr. LaBonge. And we're going to lose Joe in about 10 minutes as well. So, Mr. Price?
Yeah, just further on these joint use agreements. I guess you were speaking primarily between the city and the school district. Any between the school district or rather the city and a private or a nonprofit, or the
We do have one.
profit, or how does that work?
Excuse me. We do have one joint use agreement that is with a non-LAUSD school. It is a private school. It's in Council District 14, Salesian. Salesian High School. Yes.
And any council.
The football field?
Yes.
And Councilmember, further, I mean, any organization can can apply for a permit to use a field from LUSD. It doesn't necessarily have to be through Recreation and Parks. Any organization can apply for a civics center permit from the school district.
Is there a different fee schedule for the city as opposed to community-based nonprofit who wanted to lease the field or do something to the field? Or?
There used to be, I would have to get back to you exactly on that because it has changed over the last few years. Yeah, we can include that information in the report. But that's the idea, what Vicki was saying. There's lots of ways to get access to the school. And a lot of our joint use agreements are, as Councilmember Labange was alluded to, are because of Proposition K, where there was city funding that came from the city to help build an amenity at a school, which then Prop K demands that we have a vested interest in it, whereas that's the only way to do that is to create a joint use agreement. And honestly, that's where many of them of JUAs have really been born, is because of that. If there's no reference to that, then there's a lot of ways of just applying for a permit. We permit out many parks to the school system across the city that they use everywhere.
But
Councilman, in your district.
But not many to other nonprofit or community-based organizations. Is that something you're looking at, or?
Well, we have a fee schedule that we permit out to schools and nonprofits.
Right.
Yes, and charters.
Yeah, I mean.
But that's to use the facility, not really to operate the facility. I mean, I'm thinking perhaps of a park that's got a pool, it's not operational, and the Y wants to run the program, or some other community-based nonprofit, based on whatever the criteria is. I just want to.
Oh yeah, I mean
they can permit it. Yes, they can permit it with us, with Rec and Parks.
But we also have an example would be at the Hearts of Los Angeles. That's an example where we partnered with a nonprofit. They actually run many of the programs in that facility. So the answer to your question is yes. They actually have office space in the building. We do as much as we can to allow folks to do that as well.
All right. Mr. Cedillo.
I don't want to get off my main point here. What I'm looking for is those others also, like you said, Heart of LA. I just saw an incredible performance of young people playing instruments this weekend in Lincoln Heights, and at a facility that I don't imagine was a city facility, so I'd be interested in that also. My interest is not exclusively, although there is a big concern about our lack of park space in the first district, but it's also other usage, libraries, computer labs, other rooms that could be used for other use for the community. So what I'm trying to do is we passed these bonds 10, 12 years ago. We're building all these great schools, but we really need to make them accessible to the community after the bell rings, as they say. And so that's what we're looking for, at least our interest in the first, because we are Park 4 minus the Griffith Park, and I think some of our math needs to be configured with, minus that, what it looks like then. Because we have some networks of park along the Royal, but they're not accessible in the things, the activities that people are searching for. So they're not accessible for walking around a safe track at night, or they're not accessible for this desire for so many people to play soccer. They're not set up for that way. And so what we're looking for is how we bring value added through these joint use agreements for people of our community.
Right, thank you. And what I'd like to suggest is, it's come to my understanding that there are 3 different motions outstanding on JUAs, so it might be useful to continue the item and have a report back on all 3. And I'm sorry?
Mr. Chair, Deputy
Please.
City Attorney Arletta Maria Brimsey. You're right. There are 3 related motions to this issue regarding joint use agreements. 2 of the 3 were referred by the Council President to this committee.
I see.
The second one, which is in Supplement 1, was not referred to this committee. So I might suggest that you ask the Council President to refer it to this committee and then hear all 3 items at the same time.
Great suggestion. I'll do just that. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. I'm sorry? Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. So the request is to move this item to council and then bring the items back together. Is that doable?
But
Okay.
again, the item that Mr. Levon just motioned, which is Council File 13-0851 Sub 1, that was not referred to this committee. It was referred to
That's the one that we're-
Recreation and Neighborhoods Committee. So you would need to ask the council president to refer to this committee so that you can then properly agendize it according to the
Okay.
Act and then here discuss the matter.
That's exactly what we'll do without objection.
No objection.
Yeah, we're good. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. Thanks, Mike.
That's good, Gil.
Mr. Chair, then in
Yes,
that
please.
case, are we holding this item in committee pending resolving the issues of the other motion, or are we sending this to council?
We're sending this item to council, and then I will ask the council president to send the other pending item to this committee.
The one in supplement 1,
Supplement 1. Okay.
supplement 2 has already been referred, it was referred last Friday.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, Mr. Clerk, item 3, please.
Item 3, motion O'Farrell Labange relative to directing the Department of Recreation and Parks with the assistance of the Chief Legislative Analyst to report within 30 days to the Arts, Parks, Health, Aging, and River Committee on the feasibility of creating a cafe, restaurant, and watercraft concessions at the Echo Park Lake Boathouse, including an option for issuing a request for proposals for said location.
Here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Noel Williams, Recreation and Parks Finance Division. I also oversee the concessions.
Thanks, Noel.
We do have your motion. Just to give a little bit of background, we did go out to bid late last year, early this year, for both what I'm going to call watercraft, not just pedal boats, and restaurant in the cafe. At that time, we bundled it into one concession. We did not receive any proposals back. After that time, what we did, but we did have a significant number of people attend the pre-proposal conference, people who were interested in either cafe or watercraft operations. After we did not receive, we consulted with the city attorney, and as a short-term solution, the solicitor wrote letters to all the people who had attended the pre-proposal conference because we had a significant group. Asking them to submit a proposal for us. We did not receive any restaurant or cafe proposals. However, we did receive a proposal for somebody interested in watercraft. We met with them. They're called Chafee and Company. And we had various discussions, and we've issued them a 90-day permit. Subsequent to that time, we also received from Council District 13 at that time, Mr. Garcetti's Council District, an unsolicited proposal or unsolicited interest to in the cafe with the Square One Dining, which also owns a restaurant, I believe, still in Hollywood, in the Hollywood area. After meeting with them, we felt their goals and our goals were very similar in terms of the types of food that we'd like to see, kind of wholesome food and reasonably priced food for the community. And we also issued them a 90-day permit. The watercraft started operations on July the 20th. I think they have 10 to 12 pedal boats, two-person gondola, and a outrigger canoe where people paddle themselves. The pedal boats are the individuals, the gondola is pushed around with a gondolier, I guess would be the name, and then the outrigger people paddle themselves with a guide. To date, our concessionaire and the positive response we've received has been very positive. And I was out there actually on Thursday, which was a weekday, wasn't even a weekend, and they were pretty busy. The Square One Dining had a small delay due to LA County health inspections. They had a soft opening last Thursday, which I was there. They have a kind of a unique little menu with a few little items: home baked pastries, coffee, home squeezed lemonades, and things of that nature. And they were also very pleased. And while I was there anyway, which was in the later afternoon, they had a constant walk-through business. We're still working on some issues on trying to figure out how we can add more tables and chairs so that we can have a sit-down, more people sitting in the area. But to date, we do have concessions up and running in that area, and we've received a very positive response. And I think our tweets and Facebooks have been pretty good. So with that, our next step would be to go to our board requesting some short-term contracts. These are permits for 90 days, short-term contracts for a year. Hopefully during that time we can, we want to try a few different things to see what works and what the community wants to get a little bit more input. And that would give us the time to kind of do that and get a newer RFP out together, or RFPs out together.
Thank you. And
splitting the RFPs.
perfect. Thank you. Thanks for getting operators out there, both for the boathouse and for the cafe portion this summer. I think that's terrific,
Yeah,
and it's
we're
really
looking
helped bring
forward
things
to
to
a
life.
Busy Labor Day.
It was great, and I'm glad to hear that you'll bifurcate the two and put them out to RFP separately. In my view, that was always what I had wanted in the first place, and I think that that combined with the community component, it's terribly important to me that the community have input in who's ultimately selected, whether it's the same operators there, as long as there's a fair, open process.
Right.
And I would further advise Rec and Parks to meet with if it is existing and functioning, the Park Advisory Board of Echo Park Rec Center, wonderful. And then you have several groups, the Neighborhood Council, the Improvement Association, the Historical Society, et cetera, all the existing groups, and then even beyond, and maybe do even a town hall situation. I'd love as many community voices as possible before to weigh in on the selection before it's ultimately decided. Thank you. Mr. Cedillo.
I'm just interested in the RFP process for for both of them. Particularly the cafe seems pretty modest given the vitality of the district, 13 around cafes and shops, restaurants, that you didn't get anyone at first, and then you chose from one.
I think part of the issue is we really have no history because there hasn't been a cafe there for like ever. Long time. So there wasn't any way in some of our other concessions, we have histories on what earnings potentials could be, but there we have nothing. And so because it hasn't been open, well, I've been with the department 7 years, and I actually can't remember any time it's been open.
The 90s, I think.
Yeah. And so there's, no way for people, and it is a lot of restaurant is around there too, if you go up to Sunset and you kind of go around. So it's going to be pretty competitive as well. And I think people just were a little hesitant. But we do have an experienced operator. They have at least the Square One, and they're opening another restaurant somewhere else. And they stopped that one to come and do this, and I think they're pleased, and we're pleased to see people.
So the challenge was not in the outreach, but it was
No.
more in the kind of the fact
We
that
had about 30 people attend the pre-proposal. One or two were existing. We had a goodly number of people attending the pre-proposal conference. And we had worked with the council district to try to get the word out. And I just...
So it's just the risk, the structure.
Yeah, and to be quite honest, if you do business with the city, once you sit in the pre-proposal committee, you see there's a lot of city regulations that have to be met, including living wage and service worker retention and a lot of things. And some people are a little turned off by that.
What's living wage versus minimum wage?
Living wage, I believe, now is around, with no health benefits, around $12 an hour. Minimum wage is $8, $9 an hour. So.
And that's a great question, Mr. Cedillo. Is it also for positions where tips are received, gratuity?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So
you
living wage applies.
Your living wage always applies. Our current concessionaires that we signed the 90 days are meeting all those regulatory requirements.
Wonderful.
And still, they seem pretty happy with business.
I would love for Rec and Parks to work with staff. And Mr. Cedillo, you're invited to talk about some of the sort of the vision for what we would like to see on the ground out there in terms of the look and feel of the boathouse and the surrounding environment in relation to the boat concessionaire and the restaurant concessionaire.
Yeah.
Please.
There's a few things they'd like to do, too.
Wonderful.
Kind of make it a little...
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Without objection,
We're going to item 15.
we are going to item 15.
Will
Yep.
this be continued then, pending the report back?
Yes, please.
Okay, very good.
Thank you. And item 15.
Item 15, motion O'Farrell Buscaino relative to requesting a city attorney to prepare and present an ordinance or ordinances to provide the city with the necessary authorities to address the illegal vending in Echo Park while the court renders a final decision on the matter.
Thank you. And please.
Well, actually, staff is looking to me.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Maria Brimsey. I am actually general counsel for the Department of Recreation and Parks, so I have double duty here. Just before I went on vacation, I spoke to your staff about what we could do at Echo Park and the fact that the current provisions that would regulate commercial activities in parks has been temporarily suspended. Just a little history. Our office had prepared an ordinance, and it had come through this committee. However, we noticed that the language, there was some phrasing in the language of that draft ordinance that had been challenged and found to be unconstitutional, so we pulled the ordinance. And we have been meeting and discussing, trying to figure out ways where we could sort of address the problem, but we've been waiting for the court to make a decision. So just before I went on vacation, which was on the 28th, I advised your staff that we could, wasn't our preferred method, but we could prepare an ordinance that would sort of give us a stopgap measure, something we can do until the court makes a decision, and we may have to revisit the issue. And while I was on vacation, my division manager tasked me with the assignment of doing that. So today's my first day back, and I will work on the ordinance. If you could give me a couple of weeks, just continue the item for a couple of weeks, I can come back.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. Thank you. We'll do just that. And any indication on when that judgment may come?
I needed to confirm this with our litigators, but from the emails, and I printed them out,
Sure.
that we're going back and forth while I was on vacation. There was an indication initially that the judge might not make a decision or wasn't required to make a decision until sometime in February. But I saw an email just before coming this afternoon that there may be something that has come out recently, but I just wasn't able to confirm.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Price.
Yeah, does this also impact vending on the street as opposed to a park? Is there some
This would just be in
This
parks.
is, the litigation, though, just involves park
Yes, the
vending?
challenge was to park vending, yes, or vending in parks.
And if I may indulge just a little bit for my colleagues, the concern is that these judgments sometimes take months, if not years, and this is in light of the $45 million public dollar investment in Echo Park Lake. And it's not even really about the food vendors, it's about the swap meets, just vending in general, and the corrosive effect on the actual environment. This is about the public dollar investment and not squandering that investment with this newly opened park. So I appreciate that.
We also have a similar problem in other parks. And
Of
so
course.
the ordinance that we would prepare would deal with the provision that would regulate commercial activity in all parks, not just Echo Park.
Right, and the aim is to create an actual permitting system so that the community has some say in that.
Either a permitting system or nominal utility, much like what we have for Venice, something that we know has already withstood challenge in court. So.
Well put. Thank you.
Just to clarify, we do have permits, and we do issue permits, but these are people who do not, or vendors who do not pay permits. They leave trash. There's a whole lot of issues. Illegal things are being sold.
Right.
There's no system for review when they're not under our current permits.
Right.
Or they clash with our current concession contracts.
Right. There's a lot of work to be done. Well, thank you. I appreciate that information, Madam Attorney, and I look forward to the report 30 days from now, roughly. Perfect. Thank you. And we do have one, colleagues, any questions or comments? We have one comment item, Mr. Richard Hopp. Thank you, Mr. Hopp.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Hopp. This issue has been, I had to take this to court regarding Hopp versus City of Los Angeles regarding secondhand dealer permits and free speech. And unfortunately, I took it all the way to Court of Appeals and won. It's a published decision. And I would like to work with your counsel to make sure it doesn't impede, because unfortunately I'll just take City of Los Angeles again back to court. I have attempted through the Public Records Act to get clarification through Mr. Labange. Upon trying to meet and confer with him outside, he took it very hostilely that I asked an illegal Public Records Act request, which I thought was interesting. But since his office has never responded, I had to do a claim of damages. And he then decided to say he was represented by counsel, which I ceased talking to him. But he also had me detained by Officer Johnson for doing that to him. I find that a little problematic. He's put this committee into jeopardy since he has failed to respond to the Public Records Act, or even asked me unilaterally to toll time, which I would give to him, not a problem. And it's just one problem after another. According to him, he's not required to answer Public Records Act requests, nor this committee, nor any government agency. I have to sue over it, in which that's going to be very unfortunate that he's going to create a situation where there's going to be a finding that certain council people here did not follow a constitutional right through a Public Records Act request, or at least ask for clarification, or instead of saying call a city attorney, this is the city attorney you should call, or have the city attorney call me. It's not a problem. We're here to work everything out. Your office has actually been very good. Didn't get where I wanted, but at least they gave me great customer service. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hopp. Thank you for making the time to come in today. And at this time, I'd like to open the meeting for public comment, and I do have a couple of comment cards. And that is, let's see. Yeah, Mr. Hopp, you're up for public comment again, but I will call in Ruth Sarnoff. Ruth?
I came here today because I want to encourage you to support the motion around it's on the right of people to plant gardens in public right-of-way areas. Many have already done so, and because of that, it has precipitated some discussion. And now there's a motion to set up a committee to move this through to something more permanent, but to have a period when they will respect people's right to do this on a temporary basis and not force people to pull out their gardens. It's a temporary, it's a motion, but I would hope that this committee, among other committees, maybe also the education in neighborhoods, perhaps, and energy, environment, and transportation, some of the other committees would also be tracking this. It's a wonderful opportunity because food, water, and clean air, and getting more of our food from local resources are part of the wave of the future. And there's a lot of islands, I think they're called deserts, in Los Angeles that are places where there's very little provision for obtaining fresh fruits and vegetables, and many opportunities to grow this. And if I could have some moments to react to some of the things on the river project, I would appreciate it, but I don't know if you wish to do that. It's up to the chair, I guess.
Ms. Sarnoff, I'm happy on the way out to spend a moment with you. Would that be agreeable?
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Hopp, more comment?
Thank you. Just for my clarification, do you have a quorum right now?
No.
No, so you don't have a quorum.
Right.
Okay. I just find, just for clarifications, I'll just keep it very brief and so forth. What's the name of your council here today? Do you happen to know?
The name of the committee?
No, the council. Okay.
My name is Deputy City Attorney Arlette Maria Brimsey. And to address your prior comment, there is no quorum, but they're not taking action. They're simply listening to public comment.
No, I understand that, but I just find it, I'll talk to you outside. I'd like to do a meeting confer later on. regarding the issue. How do you spell your last name again, ma'am?
B-R-I-M-S-E-Y.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, I find it a little outrageous that one of your committee members is not responding to the Public Records Act, a Public Records Act request. If anybody ever said that they submitted anything to me, first thing I would ask is, how did you submit it? Do you have a tracking number? If the deputy city attorney was here to inquire about it, they would say, do you happen to have a copy on you? Let's try to resolve it. But it appears that's not going to happen, and I understand you're not planning to respond. Unfortunately, I just find it a little problematic where one individual is going to bring a problem for the other 4 committee members. It's a very simple Public Records Act request. It was submitted. His position is, I have to do everything through the city attorney's office, ask the name of the person. He didn't have to tell me. And I appreciate him when I called him a jerk, which I did, and so forth, where he had me detained by Officer Johnson, because that's considered a terrorist threat. It just won't be very good if that's his position. I'm not going to yell about it. Your office has been, O'Farrell's office has been nice. You've tried your best, and I appreciated it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Hupp. Thank you. And seeing as there is no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.